Hello, my name is Gabby Richardson, and you are listening to The Nexus of Narratives, where we use stories to bring people together across belief systems. New episodes are released every Monday on your favorite podcast platform, where I have a conversation with a guest about an obstacle they faced in their life that invited them to take a look at their own beliefs, whether about themselves or the world around them. We talk about how those beliefs were formed and how formative moments shape how we interact with the world. The Nexus of Narratives is what we will uncover through this story exploration. It's the common thread that unites all of us, no matter what our beliefs are. If you are an avid podcast listener, you know the deal. Please take a moment on the platform where you are listening to follow, rate, and review. Those little acts go a very long way in ensuring this important work reaches more people. In today's episode, I have a fantastic conversation with Tracey Warren. We talk about the importance of receiving support and the power of love. There's a little bit of funny business with the audio on this one, as Tracey was in an office where the staff were having a wonderful day connecting, and my microphone decided to have a mind of its own. So with that, I have fantastic news that I finally invested in a great microphone. Great microphones, actually. So this will be the last episode where my microphone is projecting ulterior motives of disconnection. So without further ado, here is a lovely conversation with Tracey, and I look forward to connecting with you again next Monday on your public feed or sooner on Patreon. Hello and welcome to the Nexus of Narratives. Tracey, I'm so grateful to share space with you, especially because we were originally going to chat probably about a month ago during my stint of being sick for 3 straight weeks. So thank you for your generosity.
My goodness.
It was quite a ride. So I met you in a virtual networking space and immediately connected as someone who also had like some amazing high fiery energy and someone I immediately resonated with, even just on a virtual space. So thank you for your energy.
You bet.
And if you were to, meet someone at a coffee shop or, in a quick conversation and just introduce yourself, what would you say?
Usually that's when I flip it around and ask them a question about themselves. But I'm a native Seattleite. I am what I would call a super connector, like connecting folks in business to other folks in business is my absolute favorite thing to do.
I love that. Beautiful, short, sweet, to the point, and so perfect. And so we chatted a while ago when we had our normal logistics conversation. So I'll just completely leave it open to you. When we had chatted, you were like, yeah, I would love to hop on and share a story. And so wherever you would like to start with whatever story you would like to share, the floor is yours.
I think what the story I wanted to share, I actually considered telling you a cult story, but I know that, you've had a few of those. I have one too, but I think the story that's really resonating for me right now is around community and breast cancer. That it's almost 5 years ago that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And what was really amazing for me, because I've always naturally connected with folks, I will say that as a general rule, I gave a lot more than I received, which is different than asking for help. It's just that I was like, no, it's okay. I don't need anything. I'm fine. And going through cancer treatment, oh yeah, hint, during COVID, was I didn't have the option to say, no, no, that's okay. In fact, I had a friend, she's like, I'm bringing you muffins and don't you dare send me a thank you card. I'm like, what? Because it all keeps going, but just the going through treatment. So I was isolated because I was going through chemotherapy, and then COVID happened. So then I'm even more like, my daughter wouldn't hug me for months. Now, at the time, she was 20, but it still sucks that she's like, nope, I'm not getting anywhere near you. I don't want you to get sick. And it's all very kind and nice. And it was also just a really hard time. But the other thing I would share is that I am a pusher througher, right? Like, something happens to me and I'm like, okay, that's done, moving on. And I think I even did that with this, where I don't know that I've completely given myself permission or taken the time to process all of the crap. Also, chemo brain is a real thing, and so there's a lot I just don't remember, which is lovely.
Yeah, so I have several thoughts that immediately come to my mind, but first I want to explore, you said, I'm a pusher througher. Where does that come from? Because that seems like a pretty strong belief, like behavior from some kind of strong belief, whether about yourself or about how you need to show up in the world. And so where do you think that comes from?
I am certain that it came from the fact that my mom was an alcoholic. And so I had to become very what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I could depend on me. Because I depend on me if I want it. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, sorry. I'm one of those people, but self-reliant, right? Like, if it was going to happen, it was on me. I didn't have time to do, like, there was no time to, like, sit in a puddle and cry about something. So I think that started at a young age. And, part of my story is being a part of a high control church that I am getting comfortable calling a cult. And so even leaving there, push through, not process any of the feelings. And now I'm like, oh, wait, my boundaries were stomped on. Huh, that's interesting. Oh, Tracey, you're too much. Oh, interesting. Okay. And so learning how to feel all the feelings and do the processing so that it breaks the cycle, right? Like, I don't want to be a pusher througher. I want to reach out for support and get help and cry if I need to. And don't get me wrong, I definitely cry. But it's usually at, like, the most ridiculous things, like McDonald's commercials during the Olympics. Right? Like, okay, I love that you're laughing because
I do that too. I surprise myself with where I start crying now.
It's like, why am I crying right now? So, yeah.
I really appreciate how what I'm hearing also is this need or perceived need to develop hyper independence. Maybe also parenting a parent and being in a high control group that then you're like, I picture like this, because I think in pictures is I just picture you, but with like the most robust set of armor. because like that was how you learned you needed to navigate the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense.
Wow.
And I think what I've learned is, well, one, so I had cancer in my left breast, and I don't know a ton about Louise Hay, but I do know that she talks about how that has to do with receiving and not being able to receive. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, okay, noted and
interesting. So talk more about that, because I've never heard of that.
Well, she
like thought
talks
process
about,
or beliefs.
Yeah, she talks about that anything going on with our body has some sort of psychological component. So a number of years ago, I had a cough for like 3 months. And what I, in the end, discovered after having allergy testing and testing for asthma and seeing multiple doctors and blah, 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 was that it was really about me standing up and speaking into who I am and my truth. And so that's why I say I don't know a ton about her work, but I also, in the course of time, I've met a lot of women who have had breast cancer in their left breast.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but I am coming up on that 5-year mark, which is the like, yay, it's the 5-year mark. And, you know, I'm not worried. I did have a little in the middle there of the 5 years. I had a callback. So before I was diagnosed, I was trying again. The other thing, my defense mechanism is humor. And so when I had a mammogram, I got called back. And so I kept saying my breasts have a callback, like as if I was trying out for something. And so surgery and all the jazz. And then I had another mammogram, and they needed me to come back in and weren't giving me an appointment for like 6 weeks. And I finally called my oncologist's office, and I'm crying, and I'm like, I cannot wait 6 weeks. Like, this is unreasonable. Especially because if I should have just had a double mastectomy 2 years ago, then but yeah. So the fact I'm ready to celebrate the 5-year, and I mean, I have moved forward, but there's always this like, what if type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what does the 5-year like mark? Is there a general meaning within like cancer recovery in general, or is it just like a personal celebration because it's a big milestone?
No, my understanding, and I could have this completely wrong, is that 5-year mark is like, okay, you're good. Like the recurrence rate drops way down. It's those first 5 years that are more tenuous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions for you, and I'm sure different things will unravel as we go.
I love
it. So what do you feel was a turning point for you in accepting more support and softening some of that feeling of a need to like push through, even though you'd said you recognized you're still there to a certain degree? Is what was part of that shifting of that belief that you needed to just trudge through and not accept any help?
I think part of it was I couldn't just push through. So one of the things I did learn to do during that time was to honor my energy. And I feel like that's something I've taken through with me. Like, you can't force creativity. I mean, you could try, but if I was feeling exhausted and worn out, then I couldn't push through. But also just, people bringing meals or random folks dropping off flowers and I think the other thing about that is it was a reminder of the impact that I had that I don't think I always realized I had. And so that was very reassuring. But I also think the other thing that it's created in me is my encouragement for other women to ask for help. Because asking for help is a muscle that needs to be exercised. And for many women, and men too, I'm sure, but for many women, it's, no, I got it. I'm a strong and powerful woman. It's fine. And it doesn't have to be fine. I also think it's helped me to ask better questions. So when someone says, I'm fine, I look at them. I'm like, really? You don't look fine. And yeah, you don't look fine. So what's going on?
Mm-hmm. I feel like I just recently had this conversation and I can't remember with who, and I'm pretty certain it was recorded. So it's on one of the episodes where this reminded me of this sort of cultural flavor that we have on, oh, how are you? I'm good. I'm fine. Even if you're not. And then I noticed I started inviting myself to answer honestly if someone says, how are you? And if someone's like, oh, hey, Gabby, how's it going? I'm like, man, I'm good overall. I'm going to be okay, but I'm really struggling right now. Some people don't know how to respond to that.
100%.
Either it's like, don't know how to respond. They're visibly uncomfortable. They're like, how do I fix you then? Or that's not the answer I wanted. Just say fine and keep moving so I can get on with my day. I feel like that's the mixture of responses that I've noticed or how I feel.
Something else that is just part of my story is in 2009, I lost my mom, my father-in-law, and my grandmother to cancer within 3 months. And so I would go to church and people would say, how are you doing? I'd be like, well, no one's going to die today. So remember, I said humor, defense mechanism. No one's going to die today. And they would look at me and I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, they all died. All the people who were sick, they died. And so now I can, go forward. And sometimes if I'm in a place where I'm struggling and someone asks me, I will say, do you really want to know? Because sometimes they do. And sometimes they do what you just said, like, oh, wait, I really wanted you to say fine. But I think most people that are walking around right now are not fine. A lot of the time.
I agree with that. I agree with that completely.
But that's kind of the problem, I think, with phrases like fake it till you make it. It's like, no, I don't want to fake it. I did that for a long time. And it's uncomfortable now to try to fake it. Like, no, if I'm angry, I just want to say I'm angry or I'm frustrated or whatever the feeling is. Because if I don't express it, then it, shove that back down.
Back into the pressure cooker.
Yeah. And pressure cookers, when they go, they go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this actually naturally leads me to the other tangential thought question that I have for you is early on you'd said, well, I also have a kind of high control group story, although I feel like my first thought, I was like, why are you diminishing your experience when just because I've had two people who've been in cults on my show doesn't mean that that part of your story is not valuable. So I just want to share that part. And I do believe that when I think of stories of humans, they're this like web-like interconnected thing. And regardless, that had an influence on the beliefs that you developed and had that led to this. I have no choice but to accept help. Being a part of a high control group still, in addition to a mother who was an alcoholic and anything else that you were encountering, all still a part of how you showed up in the world, and then had to face, oh, but I can't do this on my own anymore. And so I'm curious about, find the words again, how those interconnected pieces for you still, you had mentioned like being able to say, I'm not okay, or do you really want to know? What was part of that shifting for you there to then believe it's worth being authentic now?
Oh, because there is something so attractive, and by attractive, I really mean attraction, about someone, one, who is willing to share their truth, and two, who will trust you with it. So I recently had a conversation with a friend about something new that she's been learning, and it was for my podcast, and she said that she was so excited to be sharing it with me because she knew it was a safe space. And that, like, for other people who have been that safe space for me, you can't replace that. Like, you can't buy that. You can't, right? That just happens from those real conversations. And I feel like we need more real conversations than we've ever needed them, right? Like, as women, like when women started talking about menopausal symptoms, as an example, doctors thought they were exaggerating or making it up, and now there's all of these really great, like, helpful, I see you, I hear you, you're not alone. And that I see you, I hear you, you're not alone, I feel like is one of the most important messages to share and to hear, that I am not alone, right? There are however many billion people on this planet. I can't possibly be the only one who fill in the blank. And the collective, right? The collective of that energy, or that feeling, or whatever the word is that I'm looking for that is escaping me because postmenopausal, mashed potatoes sometimes. There's so much power in the collective when we can come together and find a new way, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm. I think about some people that I connect with believe in, I don't know if like collective consciousness would be like the way to phrase it, or believe that there's an interconnection between people beyond what we're aware of. And the way that I've intellectualized it, because that's where I go first, that's how I show up in the world, is I think about the science of how we as humans generate certain frequencies of waves, and how within a certain proximity, another person can pick up on that frequency. and like maybe feel off put by it or feel attracted to it, or feel a resonance with it. And so I picture when you say like the importance of the collective is like having a collective group of people who are all committed in growth and compassion and expansion and speaking up and advocating for that. Like my picture of that radiance is like exponential. Like that's how I'm picturing it.
Well, and I can just imagine times when that has happened, where you gather in a space, and it doesn't matter whether it's 3 people or 100 people, and there's a vibration, energy is the only word that I can think of to use about it or for it, that can't explain it. You can't explain it, but you also can't deny it, right? Like, that was magical. I use the word magical sometimes because if I have an experience with somebody, like a healer that is in a kind of off the beaten path modality, that was good. I should remember that.
Very good. It's recorded, so.
I can't, it's not like I can put a finger on it and say, this is exactly how she helped me. But I have a friend that I'm thinking of, like I call her my chief magical officer because I don't understand what she's doing. And when we work together, there is no mistake that something is happening. And so I have a paralyzed vocal cord. And in this particular instance, I'm working with her to help me because I do not want to have surgery on my neck. And so like she has me stand on a balance board and like try to project my voice. And it's all, magical. But I can't deny that I can't say why it's working. And I can't really tell you what she did, but I can tell you that it's working. And that happens every day. All over the world. That's one of the things I have to believe, right? So when I'm having those days where I'm struggling, it's like, okay, find the magic, find the joy, find the little tiny bits of wonder. There's so much power in that. For me as a human, like it could be, I go blow bubbles because it just brings me joy. Or all the ridiculous toys that I have in my office at home, right? Like my Grogu and Wonder Woman. It's ridiculous and just makes me smile. And I deserve that.
Oh, that's beautiful. You deserve to smile every day. And to hear you say that, I think is beautiful. And as you were saying, I try to find wonder in every day. I'm like, oh, I love that. I'm going to take that for myself and put it in my little pocket.
All right.
And like pull it out every day. I've been, and this goes back to the like speaking up when we're not okay, is I've recently been like, man, I haven't quite found the right balance for me in navigating being a mama and doing all of the work that it takes to produce and publish and market a podcast and work like, and still like cook and work out and be healthy and like keep up with laundry and clean. Like my husband does so much also to help out, and I'm so grateful for that. And also it's a lot.
There's no way around that. It's a lot.
And so I recently had shared that with my mother, and she and I have such a wonderful relationship, and I'm so deeply grateful. And we talk almost every day. And it's like if we don't talk for a few days, we're both like, what's going on in my body? Something's we haven't talked. Like what's wrong right now? And I had shared with her, like, I know it's going to be okay. I'm just really struggling with this balance right now. I haven't figured it out. There's too much going on. And I was like expressing, I'm struggling finding the gratitude for having the space to be home with my child every day, and also not being overwhelmed to the point where I just like resent being around a toddler all the time. And I could tell I inherited this from her, is wanting to fix it immediately. And I was like, it's okay. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to figure it out. I am grateful, and I am overwhelmed, and I'm tired, and I'm joyous, and I'm all of these things at once. And I think back to your point of this kind of like magical piece of, one, I'm going to take it back to say, like, find the magic in every moment, because there is something so magical about where I am in my life right now. And that's not to diminish any hard moments, but I'm currently picking up on different strategies to help with the emotional balance of it all. So thank you for that nugget.
Well, and I also think, like, so the most ridiculous things can be magical when you have a toddler, right?
Yes.
It could, I mean, come on. They write their
How she uses a colored pencil right now.
Right?
It's magical. It's so absurd. It's magical.
It's the ridiculous words they use. I have a friend, she just said, hey, she said to her daughter, who's 5 or 8 or something, said, if you were going to take a vacation with mom, where would you want to go? And she said, the Arctic Circle. Okay, now, first of all, what? And what? But kids, they say the most ridiculous things, and they do ridiculous things. And I feel like those ridiculous things can end up overpowering, like she won't take a nap, she won't go to sleep, she's crying, I don't know what's wrong, right? That we need those moments of cute too from our children. When my kids were teenagers, we looked at them and we said, hey, we need to let you in on something. There's no manual for this. We are completely making it up as we go. Like, there's no parenting, like universal parenting handbook. And even if there was, like, you're an entrepreneur, you've got a podcast, right? We have busy lives, and there's no manual for that. And what works for you isn't going to work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And to then take it to what you were saying and like weave it back into this collective having compassionate conversations, coming together, is I have noticed since starting this podcast, just before I even like released a single episode, just sharing, this is the purpose of it. This is why I think it matters. The openness that then came in the response from people, it was almost like I experienced, if I was to put words in people's mouth, is like, oh, what a relief. Like, I can be me around you. I can share these hard parts of myself with you. It's been that has been, I think, one of the most magical, aside from every single thing that a toddler does, aside from the tantrums, that has been one of the most magical things I feel like I've experienced in the last year. Is even I had a logistics call for a future recording shortly before I got on with you. And this person has shared, I don't care how far it reaches. I just felt like I needed to share this part of me. And I felt like it was safe to do that with you. And even if it impacts one person, then I know that there's greater like love out there. And that matters to me. And
if you think about it, like our whole lives were put into these boxes, right? Like even our school system, they put you into a box. And for a lot of us, we don't really fit. I don't fit. And so when there comes a time when somebody's like, no, I really want to hear your story because your story is valuable. That's again part of the, I see you, I hear you, and you're not alone. That each of our stories is, oh gosh, I'm getting all sorts of tingly. That, nobody has a story exactly like mine, but you can find the threads, you can find the similarities, can you just come sit in this with me? No problem solving needed. Just, can we just be miserable together for a few minutes? And those parts of our story that are the hardest, I think, sometimes we don't know why we're going through them, and then something happens where it happens to a friend. And you're like, oh, I have ideas because I went through something similar. Like, I don't understand because you can't possibly understand someone else and what they're going through. But I've experienced grief and this is how I handled it, or this was something that helped me, or that as much as whatever I went through was awful, I can then be a resource for other people in some way, shape, or form, right?
What I hear and what feels like a thread through is in the giving yourself permission to slow down and be more open and listen and accept and feel without fear and judgment. Then there are these like beautiful opportunities for connection and finding ways to be of service to others, to be of connection to others. And it's hard to do that as an armored up freight train, which I can resonate with, which is why I say that.
Honestly, that's slowing down. Slow down? That has also been, well, I love that you said an armor covered freight train because that's kind of how I did things. Like, nope, I'm going to keep going. Because if I don't stop, then I don't have the space to break down, completely lose it, or whatever. Then
I don't have to look at me, like speaking from me, then I don't have to look at what I might be doing that's less effective.
Correct.
I won't say wrong. The episode hasn't been published yet, but more effective and less effective as opposed to right or wrong. And
I love that.
It will have been published by the time it came out, but so
yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a less effective way. But I think for me, it was always if I do go, then I don't have to face maybe the insecurity that's within me of, and speaking directly from myself, is if I don't do, accomplish, achieve this and that, then people aren't going to be like, oh, wow, Gabby, she's so amazing. She does so much. She's so accomplished. Because there's some part of me that if that doesn't happen, then my inner narrative of, oh, you're not enough will take over. And it's my job to work on that rather than continue to be an armored up freight train that's seeking accolades along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so the slowing down is the like, I struggle with it. I tried to do it yesterday. I went to sit down and watch TV, and I was like, I can't do this. I need to be doing something else. And I was like, no, it's okay. Just like exist for a little while. It's okay.
Just be.
Yeah, just be.
And I don't think that that's a skill that anyone is, or as a child, we don't learn how to be. It's always about doing, right? Like, oh, it's recess, go do the thing. It's whatever, do the homework. And years ago, I was chatting with a friend, and we were talking about celebrating, and she's like, "You don't celebrate because you don't think you're enough." And I was like, "Wow!" But it's okay, I did the thing. Now I need to do the next thing, instead of stopping and saying, "Yeah, I did the thing, and it's amazing, and I'm going to do a happy dance or whatever it is," instead of just moving on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see where I felt like the not enoughness. And it's this constant striving for the next thing or for the new thing or the whatever it is. I read something this morning. It said, "Stop the hustle, join the huddle." And I was like, oh, that's good. I'm writing that one down, just because it just feels like, oh, like instead of the hamster wheel, like, okay, how could we join together and huddle up and accomplish something great? Like the collective brain power of, you put a few folks in a room. I've often said that when it comes to our government, they don't know how to solve the problems that we have, because many of them are lifelong politicians. They're just throwing money at a situation. I'm like, give it to a group of entrepreneurs. We'd have that thing nailed in because I remember even in the beginning of COVID, and they couldn't figure out how to get the vaccine distributed. I'm like, nope, group of entrepreneurs in a room. They would have the logistics all worked out. And I still think, because we get to innovate and move the ship really quickly. Nothing in the government moves quickly.
No. It's like at least decades behind. But I would, to yes and what you said, because I really like what you said, is
I'm ready for a yes and.
I believe this in this ethereal group of entrepreneurs is what I believe is important to add to that is people have different life experiences. Like when we talk about building diverse groups of thinkers, and even though diversity has become a political word now, which it's not a political thing, it's get people in a room who have different experiences, are from different places, are in different times of their lives, or have different levels of education from different places, and get them in a room. That's when stuff happens. Mm-hmm. Like that's when magic happens.
Happens.
I would venture to say that's part of the reason why there's such slowness, and the money at the problem is not the right thing in government, is because innately that system doesn't have a lot of diverse thinkers. Like there is more diversity in the thinking now than maybe 10 years ago.
Correct.
But I would say any space where the primary decision makers, drivers have all been doing the same thing together for decades is, the solutions are probably going to be decades old too.
Mm-hmm. I taught at community college for a few years, and I shared a video with them. And with my students, it was an e-commerce class, and shared this video. And the person on the video was saying, a lot of companies are out there still marketing like it was 30 years ago. And one of the students was like, could you show this to the business teacher? because the business teachers, many of them had businesses in the past, but a lot has changed in how we do business.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the last, even like 5 years.
Yeah.
Much less 10, 15.
Mm-hmm. Think about, you're younger than me, but that whole, I am so grateful that when I was a stupid teenager, there's no social media memory of that. And I'm so glad, because I did some dumb stuff. And I'm really glad there's no, there is some evidence, but it's not kind of put out there for the whole world to see.
I'm grateful I am on your side of the cusp of that. Because there's some kind of, there's some server somewhere that still has MySpace information that
sure.
could just disappear, and I'd be okay with that.
I was never on MySpace. That was not, I don't think I was the ideal market for that.
I'm part of the generation who learned to do coding through MySpace.
Oh, okay.
and ranking friends and all that good stuff.
Oh my gosh.
All those healthy dynamics that came out of
isn't that how Facebook, didn't it start with hot or not? Right? That was part of it, that on these campuses, they would post these pictures and then people could vote. Are the girls hot or not? And I'm like, oh. And, that still happens now.
Yeah, just in a different way. Mm-hmm. Oh, the internet could probably spiral on that forever. And I think that's a perfect segue to the questions that I ask everyone.
Okay, perfect.
Is how can your story create connection for anyone who can relate to anything that you shared?
I think the biggest thing really is to remember that you're not alone, that no matter what you're going through, that there's someone somewhere who is cheering for you, even if you don't know that they're cheering for you. Because I think that the alternative, that there's no one, that's heartbreaking. Yeah,
absolutely.
You're not alone.
And I would, to add on to that, is the impact that, and to speak directly to someone who can relate, is to say, not only are you not alone, but you influence people that you don't even know you touch. And I think that's such a powerful and beautiful thing to carry as well.
For sure.
And not from a place of adding more pressure for how you show up in every space, but to say you don't even know what kind of positivity you're sharing every day.
It's the power of kindness, right? We're coming up on holiday season, and people get different during holiday season. And so just that little extra effort to compliment someone, or if I see a mom that is battling a 2-year-old, I always go up behind the mom. I'm like, you're doing a great job, Mom. Because especially as a mom of a 2-year-old, and you're out in public and the child is screaming, you don't feel like a good mom in that moment.
Mm-hmm. A conversation my husband and I had recently, actually. Oh, goodness, that was a good one. I'll tangent us for a couple of minutes for that. Is in our most recent trip back from visiting family in Las Vegas, we're on the airplane. It's past her bedtime. She's tired. Usually she does so good on planes, and she's playing peekaboo and waving and blowing kisses the entire time. And she had just reached her threshold of that little period of just pure rage before crashing. And I, having developed the belief as I was raised that I need to make sure I'm not making anybody else around me uncomfortable. I exist to not displease anybody around me. It was like what was showing up for me. And so I'm like frantically, what do you need? Do you need a bottle? She doesn't like pacifiers, but like, here, do you want a piece of fruit? Do you want a snack? Like, and my husband's like, will you just stop? And I'm like, no. And he takes her and she continues crying. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I am so mad that he's just letting her cry. Like, I'm livid. And he's just looking at me like, don't you dare say a single thing. And then I'm in my head like, how dare you look at me like that right now? So later, time passes where, she ends up falling asleep after a few minutes of her freaking out, me freaking out internally, feeling anger and resentment. And we're in the car and we're about halfway through the drive home. She's passed out in the car seat. And like, we're fine. Like, there's no tense energy between us. And he goes, so I can't remember how he presented it, but he essentially asked me, like, why do you respond like that when she's upset? And it led into this conversation of essentially me realizing it's me making up the story that everyone else is pissed. One, it's the way that I've developed beliefs to not want to make anybody else uncomfortable around me. It's my worry that people aren't going to be generous and understanding to say, she's been great for an hour, 5 minutes, we can handle. You're a parent. And he had said, it matters to me that she learns how to regulate her own emotions. And that we are not intercepting all the time because we're too worried that someone else is uncomfortable, and then she never learns how to regulate her own emotions. And I was like, oh my goodness. Wow.
Well, that's perfectly in line with what we've been talking about, because if I've got armor on, then no one, like, I'm not regulating myself, but maybe other people who are trying to help me are. And I'm like, no, fine. I don't need an apple right now. I need whatever. But
just let me feel it and get through it.
The fact that that's some awareness right there. That is next level awareness.
Yeah. And I was go ahead.
Will serve you well. No, it's I think about like kids who grew up like their first 2 years of life, they were in lockdown. And then all of a sudden they're expected to know how to go to a restaurant. No, how could they know? They've never been to a restaurant. And that also reminds me to have grace and compassion and empathy, because that's the other thing. None of us knows anyone else's story. And so I have to remind myself, like, you know what? Maybe that person cut me off because there's an emergency and they have to get somewhere. That's when I am my best self. But I don't know anybody else's story.
Yeah.
I can't unless I ask them. And most strangers aren't going to tell me, but there's so many like good emotions out there and things that we can share. I know when you were sharing your story, I think it made me think of Brene Brown, because the question she says is, what are you making it mean? Like, oh, my husband is sitting on the couch. He's buried in his phone. He's not talking to me. he must be mad at me. It's like, whoa, that was a big leap right there. What are you making it mean? I'm like, oh, maybe it means nothing. He's just being quiet. Great.
I'm really good at that. I'll joke. I'm making up a story in my head right now, so.
Well, and even having that language is, because then I'm sure if you say that to your husband will be like, oh my gosh, I wasn't thinking that at all. What I was actually thinking is.
Either that or this is something that will be shared in a couple of episodes before yours is released, is I was recalling a moment where I was like, well, I need you to tell me exactly what you're thinking because I'm making up a story in my head. And then he's like, well, isn't this a great invitation for you to do your own work? And I'm like, oh, how dare you? Also, good job.
Yes. You gotta, you definitely, okay, I got it.
So
Thank
both
you.
sides of it, I'm like,
that's a yes and
dang
right
it.
there. In my house, my husband's like, you are not about to yes and me. And I was like, I maybe was. I don't do it nearly as much as I used to. Now we just have conversations, but I used to say yes and all the time. I'm kind of known for it. People go, well, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, yes and. And so I love that you yes anded me earlier.
I was just going to say that explains why you lit up so much about it.
Like, oh, I love yes and.
Oh boy, I love receiving these. Well, so the next question I have for you is how, if someone can feel a relation to any part of the story, your story, maybe they're in that kind of a place, what might you share to a past version of yourself?
It's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's more than okay, right? Asking for help doesn't just serve you, it serves the person you ask. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's okay.
Absolutely. And what did or do you need to feel most connected to the people around you?
What do I need? There's something about unconditional love. So when I know that someone loves me no matter what, then in our relationship, nothing else matters to me. They can say the most rude thing to me. They usually don't, but they could, because I know that it's coming from a place of love. And so that's really, I think because love growing up was very conditional. And so that when other people love me for who I am, and I do, it's my goal to give that to other people as well, that I love you no matter what. Like it doesn't matter to me. I love you because you're you, right? Like, yeah.
I think that's really powerful to say to people as well, as I love you because you're you. That's beautiful.
The world is a better place because you're in it. And that's not a message that a lot of people hear much of the time. They hear, well, this is how you're wrong, or this is what's not working about you or your life, and I think that that's the most heartbreaking thing to me about the divide, the division in our country, is that for me, it's like, no, we're human beings and we crave human connection. And when multiple people are out there saying, nope, your way is not okay, that, like, yeah, connection.
Beautiful. Yeah. Unconditional love. I love that. And delivering from a place of love as well.
Yeah.
Because then it can still be hard.
Sure.
The conversations can still be hard. The dynamic can still get messy, but then there's still a purity that's maintained in it. And I would love to add, I don't think it's a yes and, but my interpretation of unconditional love doesn't mean that the person is crossing boundaries, is abusive.
Correct.
Because I feel like that's a fine line, having been a person who accepted my boundaries being crossed, because I was like, oh, but the person loves me or whatever, my own low feelings of self-worth at the time.
No, there's definitely a difference. Like, yeah, you can't be a jerk.
Right. And I'm not saying that you were saying that. It's I think it's easy for people listening to, yeah. So, and then last but not least, if anyone is still listening and they're like, man, I can't relate to a single thing that this lady said and not buying it, I don't know, whatever the difference in beliefs might be, how can your story create connection for people who have different beliefs?
Well, we all have different beliefs. I think that's what makes, that's where the magic comes from, is the, like you talked about earlier, the getting different belief systems in the room and different age groups. And that I think that that's one thing right now that's happening for me is I am so inspired by young people right now, because they know how to speak up for what they believe in a way that I didn't know when I was that age. So I have a lot of hope because of that. And so I think those seeking to understand is such a powerful way to leverage those connections, because I don't have to know you to care about you, to have compassion for whatever you're going through, to be gracious. That I don't have to know you to know that you are a human that is worthy of love, of kindness, of, wow, I feel very yummy right now. I did not.
I think that's beautiful. I'm like, what a perfect way to just put the cherry on top of this conversation is I don't need to know you. I don't need to believe the same things as you to know without a doubt that you matter.
Yeah.
Like that's what I heard.
Because that, I don't need to expand. Because I could, and we could just keep talking. We could just keep talking and keep talking, and
we could.
We would, I think, loop back around to the same conclusion that we're all humans having a human experience, and that means every day is going to be different. And isn't that amazing? Right? Can you imagine if, like Groundhog Day? It's
should have labeled that as a horror movie.
Oh my gosh. But I love that movie. It's so ridiculous. And as entrepreneurs, sometimes there are days like that where I know that almost every week, by Friday morning, I'm like, how did it get to be Friday? It was just Monday. And I feel like I blinked and it's Friday. But
yes, indeed.
There's something different every day, though.
And that's the beauty of life.
Back it up with a bow.
What a beautiful wrapping it was. And thank you so much for your openness, for the love you shared in this conversation, for your vulnerability, for the tangential conversations. I think this was wonderful. Always such a joy to share space with you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was really lovely.
Yeah. Well, and until next time.
All right.
That is a wrap. What an amazing conversation. And thank you again for taking your time to listen and join us here on the Nexus of Narratives. I do hope this conversation was incredibly enriching for you and that it offered some insight, tools, and resources that you can carry to the rest of your day and other areas of your life to create enriching, connective experiences all around you. I want to offer a special thank you to my dear friend Rowan, who is my co-host in the opening and closing moments of each episode, but then also for carrying the conversations on Patreon with me. Like really tremendous episodes, and it's amazing to have another person to do that with. So thank you to Rowan. That's a huge time commitment that they share as well. And thank you to my sweet and talented husband, DJ, who works tirelessly to do the best that he can to make this audio on these episodes the best that it can be, and also for creating the music that is used in this podcast. So enjoy and have a wonderful rest of your week, and look forward to seeing you back for the next episode or to seeing you on Patreon soon.